Okay, all right, you can go ahead.
All right, great. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Pro Journo's first Food Studies webinar in a series of webinars that looks at food studies at universities around the world. This is part of our ongoing coverage of global food issues. My name is Kaylee Burgess, and I'm a Pro Journo Fellow, and I'm going to be moderating today's discussion. For anyone who's new to Pro Journo, it is a journalism social enterprise for young people that looks at the business and economic aspects of today's societal challenges. I'd like to say a quick thank you before we get started to Mercator Foundation Switzerland for their funding of our global food issues coverage. So we chose to highlight food studies at universities. Hi everyone, welcome to Pro Journo's first Food Studies webinar in a series of
I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, instant feedback. My introduction. Oh, good. Okay. So we decided to focus on food studies at universities because of the trend of the food movement and how that's growing in prominence and how food studies are getting more attention and becoming more important or just getting, more interest in them. So we're also interested in them because they're cross-disciplinary, because they range everything from biology to anthropology to politics, economics. And so what we worked to do today was to assemble a group of scholars from across that spectrum to talk about food studies in the United States. Joining us for the discussion today are 4 panelists from universities across the U.S. We have Dr. Timothy Griffin from Tufts University's program in Agriculture, Food, and the Environment, Dr. Roni Neff from Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, where she is the program director for food system sustainability. We have Dr. Michael Bell from the University of Wisconsin at Madison, where he is the director of the Agricultural Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems, and Ms. Laura Seaman from Stanford University's Center on Food Security and the Environment. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate your taking the time to join this discussion today. And I'm hoping we could start out by having each of you talk a little bit about your centers or programs, the mission of their programs, and what makes them unique in food studies in the U.S. So we could maybe just start with Ms. Seaman and work our way across the bottom of the screen, then Dr. Bell, Dr. Neff, and Dr. Griffin.
Sure, and thank you for having us today. The Center on Food Security and the Environment is a research center at Stanford that addresses critical issues of global hunger, poverty, and environmental degradation. Our goal is to generate policy-relevant research on a variety of issues. We focus our research under 7 key areas. We look at agricultural innovations, we look at aquaculture, fish farming, we look at biofuels, climate and agriculture, crop and livestock systems, we look at food and nutrition security, and then finally what we refer to as deadly connections between food insecurity and issues like disease, even conflict, armed conflict, and other issues that are closely connected to hunger and poverty and food security. I think that FSE, we call ourselves FSE, is unique for a couple of reasons. One is that structurally we're not part of an academic department at Stanford. We're part of actually 2 independent research institutes that are part of the campus but not part of a department or a school. One, that means that we don't actually have students. We are an intellectual home for students that do research with our faculty, but not being part of a department, I think, allows us to really bring a truly interdisciplinary perspective. We bring in faculty affiliates and students and visiting scholars from really any field that you can think of. Food issues, as we'll discuss today, are really broad, and I think broadening even more. And so it allows us to cast a wide net and bring people together from a lot of disciplines.
Thank you. Great. So Dr. Bell, would you want to tell us a little bit about the Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems?
I'd be delighted to. I also want to speak a little bit about our agroecology master's program that we have here at University of Wisconsin. So the Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems was started 25 years ago. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. And it was started by citizens, by people in farming and in food work who wanted to see the university doing more. This was very much the time of the farm crisis, and the university was mostly paying attention to, well, you know, large-scale industrialized approaches both to agriculture and to what we eat. So they went to the state legislature, and they got it written in Wisconsin law that the University of Wisconsin will have a Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems that will widen the kind of work the university is doing. So to this day, we pride ourselves on a participatory approach. We have a Citizens Advisory Council which directs, guides our work, and then we try to connect what the Citizens Advisory Council is interested in with the research of our more than 40 faculty associates here on campus. And let's see, our agroecology program was started 8 years ago, and it is a very interdisciplinary program. We bring the social sciences and the natural sciences together, and increasingly the humanities as well. And it's a fairly small program. We want to have do a better job with fewer students. We usually have about 10 new students each year. They either do a research approach or they can do a public practice approach. And they do everything from what's going on a farm to what's going on in people's kitchens.
Very cool. All right, Dr. Neff?
Hi. So I am from the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, and we are an academic center that focuses on the connections between diet, food production, environment, and public health. And we're university-wide, but we're housed within the School of Public Health, and that's really our major focus. And we have 4 main programs. One focuses on food production and public health, and that one focuses substantially on the harms of industrial food production to public health, but there's increasingly efforts focused on more sustainable production as well. We have one on food communities and public health that focuses on basically working within communities on community food systems. We have food policy and public health, and finally the one that I run is food system, environmental sustainability, and public health. And we were founded in 1996, and we are, to my knowledge, the only center at a public health school that focuses on food systems. And in terms of what makes us unique, I'd say that one thing is that we're very focused on research to action. So there's a lot of, we do a lot of policy work, a lot of communications work, as well as the research and education. And another thing is that, so we are also not based within a single department, but we have doctoral fellowships. So we have 15 CLF Learner Fellows this year. And it's a fellowship of up to about $67,000, so it's quite substantial. And it's an amazing cohort of students that we work with closely and we really enjoy. Another thing is, I guess the last thing I'd just say is that it's a really vibrant atmosphere. There's about 25 full-time staff and about 20 to 25 research assistants. And that's all. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Griffin?
Great. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. So I direct a program that's actually located in the School of Nutrition, and the school itself is very interdisciplinary, and the program that I direct, Agriculture, Food, and Environment, covers all the way from farms and kind of the farm environmental interface to issues around disparities in food access, and our students are scattered across that. We've been around, I think, about 20 years, and for much of that time we were kind of the little tiny program at the school that was down in the corner of the building, and we're now likely the largest program within the School of Nutrition, bringing in 25 to 30 master students a year. Used to be maybe 5, and we used to have an occasional PhD student, and we now have 10. And what we really focus on is training students at both of those levels really to work in these interdisciplinary environments, develop a specific set of skills that allows them to do that. Recognizing that there's still a need for specialists, but being able to have some literacy in all of these different facets of the food system is critically important, that we have some folks that can do that. And that's really been the target of the program since the beginning, and very much continues to be the target. Okay?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. This is a good lead-in, I think. So I'm going to ask a few questions directed toward all the panelists, and anyone who feels like they want to answer that particular question is welcome to. We don't have to have everyone answer every question, but we can. And one of the first things that I wanted to ask about, because I think, part of the audience for this webinar is people who are interested in food studies and maybe pursuing graduate degrees in food studies. And so I'm curious about who your students are now, where they go when they finish their graduate studies, what work they're doing when they graduate.
I'll try that one first if you want me to. Let me start with where do they go when they graduate. Historically, it would have been overwhelmingly to nonprofit and advocacy organizations, from very much community level all the way to different organizations in DC and around the world. It's changed a lot just in the last 5 or 6 years. I've been here 6 years, and it's much more evenly split between that group, a group that works in all different levels of government, from cities to federal agencies, a group that's growing very quickly, that's interested in private sector solutions to some of these complex problems, kind of the role of the private sector, which could be, we've had some entrepreneurs, students that have graduated and started businesses, all the way to students who work for big companies in the food system. The other one that's growing is master students that continue on an academic track, either as PhD students here or increasingly we have alums just in the last couple of years at probably 6 or 7 other schools in the U.S. and abroad as PhD students. So I wouldn't say it's exactly evenly split across those buckets, but it's getting close.
Yeah.
Well, I can chip in here too. Our program's graduates doing much the same range of things that he just mentioned, but 2 other things that we see increasingly: students who get interested in international development issues come through our program, and also several of them are going into farming.
Yeah.
Now, we're in a college of agriculture. We're not in a nutrition school. So I think we probably draw a somewhat different group of students because of that. But also people are going into government, people are going into nonprofits, people are going into industry, people who are starting their own businesses, and also people who are going on for PhDs.
And I would say basically the same list also. The only thing I'd add is we've had a number that have gone into foundations as well.
Nice.
And yes, from Stanford, following up on what Tim said, we are also seeing more interest from students in the private sector, specifically mostly because of our location with some of the tech companies in Silicon Valley, looking at ways that technology can be leveraged for what we do, which is mostly in the international development field and really food issues in general.
Yeah, that's really fascinating that the place where you're located is kind of informing that sort of marriage between tech and development.
Yeah, although like everyone else said, we have a lot of students who go into the public sector, either working for the U.S. government, advising international governments, working with NGOs. We have mostly PhD and master's students. The PhDs tend to go into academia for the most part, but we've had a few go on to medical school, to other sort of professional advanced degrees like that.
Yeah, I would say our location also plays into that as well in Baltimore, so we get a lot of people going into policy in D.C.
One thing I will mention, and I'm sure all the other panelists will agree with me on this, for students who may be watching this webinar, there is no lack of employment opportunities.
I agree.
Good to hear. Good to
And
hear.
it's also a very creative area too. A lot of students are making their own things as well. So there's a lot of opportunities and a diversity of things. There's an excitement to it, I think, because of that.
Sure, sure. And actually, I think that leads in a little bit to my next question, which was about the food movement and awareness of food issues, which has grown so